Okay, so we're picking up where we left off in Sri Sarada Devi and her divine play, uh, really looking at God as the divine mother. And Sri Sarada Devi was seen as an incarnation of God as the feminine, and her practice was to see the whole world as her children. And so, uh, just in the way that she lived, she's responsible for really guiding the Ramakrishna order in its early days after it had been founded. Vivekananda personally would not do anything in regard to the center or the order without the Divine Mother's permission and advice. And how she, you look at the beginning of her life, how absolutely shy and unassuming she was, and then she really, just really took it on and became quite bold and very strong in her leadership, but in a very modest way. She led very much through her modesty, kind of in the background, and yet held a deep respect from everyone. And I don't know. I'm glad that we're studying Ma because I see her as so simple, and yet she hides such a deep spirituality within her. Thakur, it's easy to figure him out because he says everything and he talks about everything, and we've got lots of information on his movements and whatnot. And the Divine Mother, every time we see her, she seems to be so far in the background and so quiet, so humble, so utterly unassuming that it took them a while to recognize her, to realize who she was. But then as it began to catch, it really caught fire. And Vivekananda makes the point at some point in his complete works that he really felt like God as mother was something that the West really needed, that we had suffered in a sense under God as father for so long, that he thought that having God manifest the heart of the mother for us would be quite healthy and quite helpful. And I know for me that turned out to be very true. I'm responsible, a mother is responsible for my being here. I came in through the Divine Mother at Sarada Mat, as most people know, and she really held my hand in the first few years in the monastery. And after I'd been in, I don't know, somewhere around 3, 4, 5 years, somewhere in there, I felt like she handed me over to Thakur for a while. I needed some good discipline. And so we went that direction. But it's wonderful, as you know, that you can relate to God as is most inspiring to you, as God as mother, God as father, God as child, God as lover, and or God as friend, and that you can build that relationship and let that love grow, the manifestation of God grow in any way that touches you the most closely. And I guess I heard from someone actually this week that it's a good thing to choose one relationship, at least to get rooted in one relationship. But I have found in my years of practice that I have a mother period, I have a Thakur period, of course I had a Jesus period, and a period of time when Vivekananda came in, shortly after sannyas. Actually, Vivekananda kind of found his way into my heart, into my life. And that flexibility is because of the hugeness, the immensity of God, the immensity of the divine, that he can't be pigeonholed. You can't put him in a box. If you try, she will always just put her toe across the line just to show you that's not the way that it is. And God is everything and beyond. All right, so we've been talking a lot about her traveling, and she was in Vrindavan. And
what page, Maharaj?
we're on page 159.
Thank you.
And we're picking up on the paragraph second from the bottom. After a month at Vrindavan. So after a month at Vrindavan, Nikunja Devi contracted malaria. So Holy Mother sent her back to Calcutta with Kali. In February of 1887, Holy Mother heard that Ram Datta's daughter had died in a fire. So she sent Latu to him. Latu had previously worked for him. During her stay in Vrindavan, Holy Mother learned that the Dakshineshwar temple authorities had discontinued her pension of 7 rupees per month. She remarked, "They've stopped my pension. It is all right. Such a golden master has gone. What would I do with the money?" Right? That was her livelihood. That was her food. So you see her non-resistance coming in there. She just accepted as it came. And you see, even in that acceptance and in that loss, she expresses 2 things. 1, the acceptance, it's all right. And 2, a gratitude. She counted her blessings. But I had such a golden master. Why should they continue giving me money? So that's a good method there for us dealing with hardship. 1, accept it. And 2, count your blessings. See all the reasons to be happy and to be content with what you have, and don't let your mind focus on what you don't have or what was taken away. So a little bit of good insight from Mother there. Toward the end of their stay in Vrindavan, Holy Mother, Lakshmi, Yogan Ma, Golap Ma, and Yogan went to Hardwar, where the Ganges descends from the high glacier in the Himalayas and enters the plains of India. In the train on the way, Yogan was suddenly stricken with a high fever. While he was unconscious, a terrible form of a deity appeared before him and said, "I would have to put an end to your life, but I am helpless. On the order of your guru, Paramahamsam Deva, I am leaving you. However, you must offer some rasagolas, juicy cheese balls, to this woman." The figure pointed to a goddess wearing a red sari. The next morning, Yogan's fever subsided. Now, that's an interesting occurrence there. It's just that evidence too. I mean, I don't know what to do with those things. They happen, there's no doubt about it. But they usually are such personal things, and it's usually the experience of having it itself, not regardless of content, but certainly in addition to the content. It's just the experience of it will teach you so much, because that's what Swami Prabhupada said to me. I once asked him, I said, "How do you know if a vision is real or if it's just your imagination?" And he said, "If it's real, you will be forever changed. If it's not real, it will fade with time. You'll forget." And so that's how he said you can tell the difference between an imagination and a real vision, or a dream and a vision. So, yeah. The pilgrim stayed for a few days at Hardwar, where many mendicants practiced austerities. Holy Mother bathed in the Brahmakunda and consigned some of the master's hair and nail clippings to the sacred river. She visited all the important holy temples, then climbed to the top of the Chandi Hill, where she worshipped the Divine Mother. After that, the party went to Jaipur in Rajasthan to visit the famous Govinda temple. While visiting the temples, Jogan saw a goddess with a red sari whom he recognized as the same deity that he had seen during his fever. She was Sitala, the goddess of disease. Yogan bought a half rupee's worth of rasagolas from a nearby shop and offered them to the goddess. From Jaipur, the party visited the Brahma temple in Pushkar, an ancient holy place in Western India. Pilgrims bathed in the Pushkar lake, which is surrounded by hills on 3 sides. One of the hills is named after Savitri, the wife of Brahma. Holy Mother climbed up the 750-foot hill to worship Mother Savitri. Afterwards, she and her party returned to Vrindavan. Ordinary people torment themselves with grief when their dearest ones depart from this world. But the wise know that after union comes separation, after life, death. Of course, in the beginning, Holy Mother felt grief like other human beings, but she quickly got hold of her emotions and anchored her lifeboat to the eternal Godhead. That's a little example there of what we've been talking about, this idea that your power of detachment and your power of attachment have to be equal, that the ideal of Vedanta is not detachment. That's not the ideal. We practice our detachment to try and strengthen it so that it can be equivalent to our power of attachment, which comes to us quite naturally. And so you see, this is how that detachment works. She wept and she felt her grief. But when it was time to be finished with that, she was finished with that. She could turn it off as well as turn it on. She understood the nature of these things. And these are the different levels of consciousness, that we have, that we see the world differently as we grow spiritually, as we become aware of what is real and what is not real, as we come to know not as mental knowledge, but as living knowledge. The way we see the world begins to change. And we see it more and more like it is until we reach the highest, which is to see our beloved everywhere, to see God in the face of everything and everyone. Yet she badly needed this year-long pilgrimage and period of sadhana, which relieved her grief to a great extent. Repeated visions of and directions from the Master also reassured her, and she slowly began to fulfill his mission. Finally, Holy Mother decided to return to Calcutta. On the way, she and her companions stopped at Prayag in Allahabad and the confluence of the Ganges and the Jamuna rivers. She bathed in that holy confluence and offered some of Ramakrishna's hair that she had been carrying with her. She later described the incident. Is the Master's hair a mere trifle? After his passing away, I carried his hair to Prayag to offer it at the confluence of the sacred rivers. The water was still. As I held the hair in my hand, suddenly a wave rose and carried it away. The spot, already sacred, took the hair from my hand in order to increase its sanctity. The party returned to Calcutta in August of 1887. So she took a year there and went up to Vrindavan, that holy city, and practiced her sadhana and worshipped at the different temples. And obviously blessed the rivers, that confluence and the Ganga with some of the Master's own relics. So if you go to those places, you can look at them and know that your very own beloved is there, that presence is there.
Maharaj, that's the place I grew up in.
Really?
At Prayag, yeah.
At Prayag. Very nice. I've been to Hardwar. That was a very interesting place. The river moves quite quickly there. And to go down and bathe, they have these big little stalls with big fat chains that kind of go out into the river a little bit. So if you are going to go down and dip, you can hold on to the chain so you don't get washed away by the current.
Where is this, Swamiji?
In Hardwar. In Hardwar.
Haridwar.
Yeah. And yeah, we went upstream a little bit to Lakshmanjula. We stayed up in that area, and I heard from the sadhus there that they were saying that more and more Hardwar was becoming more and more of a tourist destination. And so many of the sadhus were starting to go upriver into the mountains a little bit to the next village, farther up the river, so that they could have silence and do their practice there without being a photo op.
Maharaj, Kankal, Gita, Pratibha, goes there. Kankal is very close to Hardwar.
Yes, it is. It's a stone's throw. Yeah, the order runs a hospital there.
Yeah. So a lot of foreign tourists come to Rishikesh, basically. So
yeah.
That's how they are flooded over that area,
Yeah, it's interesting because I found out when I was living there that a lot of young Israelis go there because apparently it got this reputation of being a great place to go when they get out. They have to they're forced to serve a year in the military when they come of age, and after they are finished serving, they're given like a $10,000 bonus or something. And somehow Rishikesh got on their radar screen, and so they all started going to Rishikesh to celebrate after their conscription was finished with Israel. So I just found that out while I was there, because it was quite noisy when I was there at night. We were staying. I have funny stories, but they're not really spiritual stories, because I wasn't really a Vedantist at the time. When I stayed there and stayed in the hotel there, but I really had the wits scared out of me one morning, because I was laying there in bed just enjoying the quiet, and we were on the top floor, and actually it wasn't even a floor. It was something you can only do in India, because it was the roof, but they had put up these like tin stalls on the roof and created like more rooms that you could stay in. And so I was staying in one of those. And one morning I thought the entire building was collapsing to the ground, because this entire squad of monkeys were jumping a nearby tree and landing on my tin roof and running across the tin roof of all of the rooms and off onto another roof on the other side. And I had no idea what was happening. It was this incredible sound. I thought the building was going to come down. That's also the room where another one of my Indian experiences. These are just candy. They're not. There's no meaning in these. But I went into the room my first day arriving there. Went into the room and put my luggage on a table, and there was this like inch wide, thick band of ants that were kind of making their way across the wall and up toward the ceiling. And so I went down to the to the front desk, and I told him, "Oh, I have ants in my room, quite a few of them." And he just smiled and looked at me like, "Okay, what's the problem?" And so I told him, I said, "No, I have ants. Come see." So he came with me and I showed him. He said, "Oh, yes." I said, "Do you have a spray or something we can get rid of the ants?" "Oh, yes, yes, yes." So he disappeared for a while and came back and came into the room, and he had a spray container, and he took the lid off and he started spraying the ants. But instead of dying, they all started they were in a nice orderly band. They just scattered. I mean, thousands and thousands of ants. They were all over the place. And I was like, "What in the world's going on?" And I took the can from him and looked at it. It was a can of air freshener.
Oh my God.
It's like that's not going to help. What have you done? Now there's a significant problem. I don't remember how that resolved, but I had it was my karma, because I kept running into little things like that on my whole trip. It was, I could do a whole hour of just odd stories from my travels in India, the things that I encountered on the train, because it was my first time there, and I just had never been around anything like that. But yeah, that did make the ants smell good. But there was another time when somebody was spraying air freshener. I was in the back of a car from one of the cars from Bellarmont, and I was being taken back to Bellarmont from downtown, from the Advaita Ashrama downtown. And as we were driving, it was a Muslim holy day where they were actually carrying some kind of mosque, on their shoulders, that was all lit up and decorated, and everybody was celebrating and dancing in the streets. And we were in the Bellarmont car, and I was in the back, and I was a little concerned because I was a Westerner, and the driver just told me to put my chudder over my head, and so I did that. And then it was getting pretty intense. We came up to a truck that had been abandoned, and they had broken all the windows out of it. The truck driver apparently had just taken off and run and abandoned his truck there. And so we were kind of pushing through the crowd very slowly in the car that we were in. And it was getting kind of tense because there were these three guys with swords that were standing in front of the car, and they started tapping the hood of the car with their sword handles. And our driver reached down and picked up a can of like Axe body spray. It wasn't Axe body spray, but it was something like that. It was like a spray perfume for men that you would spray on like after the shower. And he just opened his window and just started spraying the crowd with it. And I was freaking out. I was like, what are you doing? Because all I could think of was those ants back in Rishikesh. I was like, we don't want this crowd angry at us. Why are you spraying them? But it was a gesture of goodwill, I guess, because it was perfume. And so they was spraying it out the window on everybody. And then the three swordsmen who were tapping on the hood of the car totally changed their demeanor and began leading us. And so they actually led us through the crowd and parted the crowd in front of the car for us as we went through. And so here I am today. Anyway, let me stop that because I'll just keep going with those stories. So ordeals, chapter 11, ordeals in Karmarpakor. And the scripture it starts with is, O Krishna, the supreme teacher of the world, let calamities always overtake us, because we will then have thy sight, which prevents rebirth. Supreme teacher of the world, let calamities always overtake us, because we will then have thy sight, which prevents rebirth. Let calamities always overtake us. It's a very interesting prayer right there. O Krishna, supreme teacher of the world, let calamities always overtake us. He's begging for calamity, for struggle. Why? Because then we will have your sight. Because it's calamities that make us search inside for understanding, that make us search for solution, that make us search for figuring out the whys and whats of being. It's funny that when we're doing well in spiritual life, we tend to start coasting, to sit on our laurels, as it were. And so the suffering of life is there to help us, because you don't change seats unless the one you're sitting in gets uncomfortable. And so mother's one of her duties as the loving mother is running around setting little small fires under our chairs when we get a little bit too comfortable, when we get a little bit too complacent in our spiritual life. She'll send a trouble or two to wake us up, to give us a good nudge.
It reminds me, Maharaj, of I think it was Kunti, correct me, in the group. And when Shri Krishna asked her for, to ask him for a boon, and she says, give me all the suffering so that I will always remember you. And so it was very similar.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's one perspective. Very good perspective. And the other is that if all your karma, if you want to, get rid of it, get all the problems now, and I've heard people say that. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, I hear it, I understand it, but what really impresses me is someone's nerve to pray it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To go to the divine master and say, bring all the calamities on me.
There was another
yeah
that Swami B used to say about a family of 4, and the same prayer was said so that they can it was a prayer to relieve other people of suffering. It was a name that starts with R. I don't remember it. I'll try to find it.
Yeah. Well, it's phenomenal. I mean, that's real devotion. That's real faith. When you pray for calamities so that you don't forget God, that's the kind of love we're looking for. That's the kind of commitment we're looking for in ourselves. Wow.
But that's just not you. It's your family. how can you ask for calamities? For me, it's okay, but for my family?
No, and the
Yeah.
other thing is that if we have true love for God, I mean, I'm not saying anything. It's just a thought that why should we ask for calamities? We should be remembering God anyways all the time. I mean, if
Well,
I know it's easier said than done, but yeah.
yeah, no, that's the thing. We there's definitely truth that we think about God much more when we're suffering than when we're not.
Yeah.
We have no problem partying without God, but we have a hard time crying without Him. So I understand it. I'm really challenged though, as I sit there and consider my own self. Like I honestly think if I was being very honest with myself, I don't think I'm at a point where I could actually pray that prayer earnestly. It'll take some searching inside. It's interesting because I think it's beautiful. It's very brave. It's full of truth and blessing. There's no doubt. But I'm a terrible sufferer. I,
But actually,
don't.
Swamiji, I don't think Kunti was an ordinary soul either,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so maybe it's a Leela, maybe. So,
yeah. No, definitely. An ordinary soul couldn't pray this sincerely. That's why I'm just kind of in awe of it myself. So, well, yes. Anyway, that's the kind of longing that we need to have toward the divine. That nothing else is as important to us as our spiritual life. Oh God, I'm feeling so challenged inside. Really, my heart is crushing right now. My goodness.
It'll come in its own time. I guess I
Yeah.
can say that was the most progress as quickly as I could have not even asked for, was the trials and tribulations brought into this lifetime. It really just it does exactly what that is. It takes you so close to full surrender where it's like you basically feel waterboarded into submission and the constant just surrender of those things. And then it becomes like almost like the Buddhist philosophy of just, cultivating and surrendering those what's perceived as pain and, torment at times, and just complete, just, that end of the spectrum. And when it's surrendered and out of ignorance, it's actually strength and everything that we could want, spiritually and in a human life, just to rise above those things. And, I've lived that, but to sit and pray for it again, it's almost like, I kind of lived the life of a renunciate for a long time. And then you see, if you take your eye off of the Lord just for a split second, then comes the pain of those around you. And that's where it gets tough. Definitely wouldn't pray for it though. But it is
Yeah.
a quick way to wake up.
Yeah, no, definitely from the other side, when you look back on it, you can see the blessings. Because you're sitting in the growth, you're sitting in the bliss that is developed inside. Because that's what it makes you do. It makes you withdraw from the world and from the body and even from the mind. Sometimes it makes you search for the refuge that God has also provided.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also that comfort I know in the Christian scriptures that God makes a promise that I will never tempt you beyond your ability to stand. And so the divine does harm us sometimes, is seemingly harm us, because it always we come out better for it in the end. So it wasn't a harming. So that's the perspective we have to work on, is understanding God is not harming us. God is moving in love toward us. That I've heard several times saints say that those who suffer, those whom God loves most, He causes to suffer.
Yeah. He's the jealous God that they taught us about. I think that's the jealous part. Like, you don't want to let me handle that. Like mother will give you something just so you can say, here, do it, Mom. Because we love that. We love to serve our children. Like, okay, give it to me. I think that's maybe what's going on there. She's like, yeah, let me do that. Let me do that. Watch.
Yeah,
You know?
indeed. Time has the power to heal many things, and Holy Mother's grief subsided to a great extent during her year of pilgrimage and association with holy people. On the 31st of August, 1887, she returned to Calcutta, where she stayed at Balaram's house for 2 weeks before leaving for Kamarpur. Holy Mother's biographers have struggled to follow the chronology of her life after her pilgrimage because there are not sufficient records for the years 1887 to 1920. She led a private life beyond the gaze of the public. We shall divide this period of 33 years into 3 periods, 1887 to 1898, for which no detailed information is available, 1898 to 1909, during which Holy Mother began her spiritual ministry, and 1909 to 1920, when she lived in Calcutta and Jairabati, and her ministry reached fruition. So that's fascinating, that really it looks like after Thakur's passing, or transforming his Mahasamadhi, going to the other room, let's say, because she's seeing him fairly regularly. He's giving her advice and teachings and kind of coaching her on where to go and how to go about things. But we see on that first 10-year period there, 12-year period, 11-year period, 11-year period, that we really don't have any records that she really went in. You see a lot of, Jesus did this also, went out into the desert to be quiet and to prepare himself for his ministry. And that's where he was tempted by Jesus. Buddha, the same, went into a deep practice, and Maya came and tempted him there as well. And so here we have Holy Mother going deep into seclusion, into practice, and then coming out and serving with her spiritual ministry, really preparing herself. And so we see again Thakur doing what he teaches, that every so often we should all go off for a time, to be deep in prayer. Take nothing else with you, nothing of the outside world. Just take some time and go and pray more than you normally pray. Meditate more than you normally meditate. And don't let any of your worldly habits go with you for that 24 or 48 hours or however long you're going. So I really say to you, take advantage of that and do that. I don't feel like that we do that very often. And, I remember Swami Prabhupada used to lament that the Olima retreat, which we maintained solely for that purpose, was always full with people who were not Vedantists, that our own members very rarely went out there and stayed or spent any time there. And he used to always lament that. He said, here we have put together such a wonderful place for the devotees to do their practice and to come away every now and then into the wilderness. But so few come and do it. And so I urge you, to make it a part of your life, to once a month or every couple months or, every quarter. The time is up to you and what you can possibly arrange. And it doesn't have to be any more than a good full day. It would be nice if you could have 2 nights in a day so that you could get a full period there where just waking up and going to sleep. But if you can't do that, just come up with a day where you just go away early in the morning and spend time at the beach, in a quiet place, not a crowded place, but a quiet, secluded place where you can sit, take a sandwich with you for your lunch and some water, and take a little picture of Thakur and whatnot, whatever you need, whatever would make it a beautiful time. And just do japam, do poetry, write a letter to Mother, or, just sit there and just put your mind at the feet of God, and let that power change you. We have to get to that point where that mantra is a fire in the heart. That is our refuge in a real way. Refuge means you see the danger of forgetfulness, and you're quite serious about taking refuge. If you're in war and you take refuge, you're running and screaming to that refuge. it's because you're actually saying, I'm beaten. I have no self-defense left. I have no way of protecting myself. And we have to come to that realization in our spiritual life, that these things are as important as the scriptures say, and that this is our first priority in life. And, just like Thakur every day at the end of the day would recount the events of the day. And he would be so sorry. He would rub his face in the dirt sometimes and just pray to Mother saying, another day has passed and I still have not seen you. What is this life for? Will you have me waste my days? Will they slip away without knowing you? And, this will come in time for all of us. I'm not saying these things to feel guilty. There's no point in that at all. But I'm saying these things because, at some point in our spiritual life, we should see the what was the word? The important, not just importance, but the desperation of our situation. We should feel it, because if we knew a moment's worth of samadhi, a moment's worth of real union with the divine, we would be crazy for it. Just like Thakur said, if a thief is in a room and he knows in the room next door that it's filled with gold, he wouldn't rest until he had gotten hold of that gold somehow. And so in our spiritual life, see Holy Mother's example here. Of course, she's taking refuge in a really, really powerful way, because she's had the beloved literally torn from her, and that pain she's suffering, but she's not going down. She's doing the work, doing what is necessary to establish that refuge, and to kill that ego, and to prepare her inner self for her work now, for what the mission that Thakur had given to her, to establish the order, to guide it through its beginning days, and to take on and initiate devotees. During the first period, 1887 to 1898, Holy Mother frequently traveled between Calcutta and Kamarpukur Jairambati. In addition, she visited some holy places. Few details are available for this period, partly because the monastic disciples of the Master were absorbed in austerities in various places, although they had a modest monastery in Baranagar. Yeah, you saw the exact same thing in all of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna. They had that haunted, dilapidated monastery in Baranagar where they were living. And they were doing intense austerities. I mean, very little food, getting up at, middle of the night hours, and doing day-long practice, japam and meditation. And when they were asked why they did it, as you know, they said, because the householders were asking them, why are you doing all of this austerity and practice? Didn't the Master do all of that for you already? And their response was, of course, yes, he did do that, but we want to make it our own. We want the intimacy of doing that practice and sitting with the Lord, with the divine, and that builds intimacy. That builds intimacy. I always tell people, if you build a shrine for the first time, you should go through and just detail it, every little thing about it, clean it and polish it, and make everything beautiful. Polish all of the brassware, even if it doesn't need it. Wash all of the pictures, even take them out of the frames and dust the inside of the frames. I mean, go through and do everything you can think of. If there's a window by it, clean every blind, one line at a time, dust it down, clean the windows inside and outside. Because you'll be amazed. Just try doing that sometime. When you have finished all of that and you go and sit in front of that shrine, there's a wonderful feeling about that. It builds intimacy. It builds atmosphere. It makes you aware of devotion and presence. And so it's a great way to do that. It's one of the reasons I know in the monastery, like every time we had a major puja, I would have to spend 8 to 10 hours the day before detailing everything. We would take everything out of the closet, all of the old brass, even if it was stuff we never used anymore. We would still take it all out of its boxes, all out of its wrappings, and we would polish every single piece, and then we would fold it all back up nicely and put it back in its boxes, and we'd clean off all the shelves, dust every one of them, with pledge, so that they'd be all shiny and clean. And the cabinets, we'd wash the fronts and the insides, we'd do the handles, we'd get up on the ladder and do the top of the bookshelf, and all the trim around the ceiling in the room. We did everything, and it would take me 8 to 10 hours to do that. And the next morning when we would go in there, we would always have a bunch of the devotees come up and sit in the shrine for the puja in the monastery shrine, and we would do whatever celebration. If it was Thakur's birthday or Ma's birthday or someone else's, they would be allowed to come in, and we would sing some songs and do it. And I tell you, it was always such a wonderful experience after all of that work to sit down in front of the shrine and to just sit there and be able to offer that, just to be able to offer all of that effort and all of that focus and all of that time with Thakur as I was cleaning, to be able to offer that and then start a puja was always just such a brilliant experience. And it made me understand that to make a place special, invest your devotion into it. Be crazy detail oriented, and maintain your shrine, and it will definitely be much more special to you in the long run. Swami Vivekananda returned from the West in 1897 and established the Ramakrishna Math at Belur in 1898. Holy Mother began her spiritual ministry then in earnest. During the second period, 1898 until 1909, she lived sometimes in Jairambati with her brothers and sometimes in different rented places in Calcutta and other areas. She did not have any permanent dwelling place, although she had inherited a small thatched hut in Karmarpur. In 1909, Swami Sharadananda built houses for Holy Mother in Calcutta and Jairambati so that she could live free from anxiety and devote herself to teaching her devotees. During the third period, 1909 to 1920, Holy Mother's spiritual ministry reached its culmination. She traveled to some important places of southern and northern India and initiated many seekers of God. Most of her teachings and conversations were recorded in this period. The return to Karmarpur. We have those pictures. This is Holy Mother's Ramakrishna's family shrine room and his cottage on the top, and then below is the interior of Ramakrishna's room where Sarada Devi lived. Just want to see those pictures there. And of course, they're still maintained that way to this day. You can still go sit in Mother's room in Jairambati, and just wonderful to even think about, actually. Just go and sit and be quiet in those places. They left such a wonderful feeling behind for us in that way. Before leaving Balaram's house for Karmarpur, Holy Mother visited Dakshineshwar. She bowed down to Mother Kali, Krishna, and Shiva and prayed for their blessings. She also went to the Nahabat, her old dwelling place, and to the Master's room. Can you even imagine what she would be going through in doing that? She spent this year away, she started doing all this work, and now she returns to ground zero, where she lived and learned and grew and served the Master with such intensity. And now she goes back. It must have seemed so vacant in a way, except for the deities, the presence of the deities. It says that sweet memories of the master arose and she remembered his advice. Look, don't extend your hand to anyone for a penny. You will never lack ordinary food and plain clothing. If you ask for money from anyone, your head will be sold to that person. It is better to get food from someone than to live with that person. Some devotees may lovingly offer their homes to you to live in, but never give up your cottage in Kamarpukur. Stay in Kamarpukur, grow some spinach, eat that spinach with rice, and repeat Hari's name. So Thakur is really just offering her really the life of a sannyasin there. Be dependent on no one. Ask for nothing from anyone. Do not live in one else's home. Maintain your independence and your quiet, your food. Let it all be available to you from yourself. And in the midst of that, do your japam, repeat Hari's name. Stay in the presence of the beloved always. So these are good instructions even for us, especially for us, that right now that don't make yourself a slave to the world. Yes, do your work. Yes, have your job, but always do it as worship, not as a means of gaining. Always practice seeing it as worship. So everything that you do during your day, as you're doing it, you're offering it and giving it and keeping that consciousness alive, maintaining that independence. So in your free time, you can do your practice, do your japam.
Maharaj,
Yeah.
at that time at Kamarpukur, not only didn't she have, just rice and spinach that she grew, but her sari had holes, and and she didn't ask anybody. She would just make knots. So but she never complained.
That's her magic. Yeah. Because she says she used to see faults in people and she used to have a trouble with it, and she prayed very earnestly. And she says the mother completely removed that now later in her life, she said, now, even though I used to be that way, I prayed to mother to remove that. She says, now it is impossible. She said, it is impossible for me to see the faults of another. So I'm sure, that's why she's the Holy Mother. She only had to be told these things one time. And her heart was so pure and herself so dedicated and so surrendered that she wouldn't have to be told again. And so you see the earnestness and the sincerity that Thakur talked about. You can see that in huge quantities in this Divine Mother.
So she prayed she prayed to not find faults with others. Wow.
Yeah. She prayed, Mother, please make me as pure as you are. Let me not see the faults of others.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. Yeah. A life of devotion, a life of dedication is beautiful. It's hypocrisy and lukewarmness that really mediate our effect in the world. We should really drive out any hint of hypocrisy, any hint of a lack of earnestness or a lack of sincerity. Religions in the state it's in many ways, because of the practitioners, have become lukewarm. There's a very powerful statement of Jesus. I think it's in the book of Revelation in the New Testament, where he tells people, he's telling his disciples, he's saying, look, I wish you were either hot or cold. He says, but because you're lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. It's like, let that fire start inside. I'm giving myself my own sermon right now. Light that fire inside. Do what you know you need to do. Reach for that ideal, because this is the one. Most important thing in this life. In the middle of September 1887, Holy Mother left for Karmarpakor with Jogan and Golap Ma. They went by train to Burdwan and then began to walk the remaining 30 miles because they could not afford to hire a bullock cart. They crossed 16 miles and reached Uchalan. Holy Mother was exhausted and hungry, so they bought some rice and lentils from a roadside inn, and Golap Ma cooked khichdi for her. After eating, Mother exclaimed, "Golap, what nectar you have prepared." They continued walking and finally reached Karmarpakor. Jogan stayed for 3 days and then joined his brother monks at the Baranagar Mat. Golap Ma returned to Calcutta after spending a month with the Holy Mother. Now this is interesting, and I'm going to jump on it here, because we had that conversation at one time about saying thank you. That we should reserve our thank yous because people are serving God in us. They're not serving us in particular. And if we say thank you, then we basically take away some of their good karma because we're paying by saying thank you. But here, you have an example of Holy Mother showing appreciation to Golap Ma. She doesn't say thank you in the sense, but she's like, "Oh, Golap, what a delightful nectar you have put together here." So she complimented her and showed some gratefulness to her, some positive. So I would say that this is perfect permission, to be gracious when people serve Mother through you. When somebody gives you something or takes care of you or.
So I didn't know that we should not thank. I didn't know that.
Well, it's not that we shouldn't. It's that I've noticed, and it's been explained to me in the past. Like a lot of times, it's not the Indian tradition to say thank you and please for everything, like it is here. And so I sometimes wrestled with it because you would do things in the temple and you'd be so faithful about it. No one would ever show any appreciation to you at all. And I didn't understand that. And in those old days, I thought that was rude. It's like, what is this presumption? And then someone told me, it says, well, everybody's assuming that you're doing that as part of your worship. And so it's not really their part to come in and say thank you. And if they do, then they're kind of, in a sense, diminishing your return a little bit. So that's one way of looking at it. And I think both of them are fine. Just check your heart. Just be aware either way. But here Mother is showing such a graciousness, such a gratitude, and I think that that's the healthier way for where we are at, really, is be gracious. When Mother does something for you, be gracious. And whoever's hand she uses to do it for you, be gracious.
Maharaj,
Yes, Mom.
in a setting where I am, the nurses, aides, and the servers, and they go out of their way. The least I can do is to say thank you for what you've done.
That's very true. They do work very hard. It's a very difficult job that they do, for sure. I watch Bill when he does his serving. My goodness, he does it heart and soul. He gives. Yes, definitely. We should definitely appreciate people who help us. We should definitely appreciate kindness. And when you see it out on the streets, even if it has nothing to do with you, if you see somebody pick up a piece of trash off the sidewalk and throw it in the trash can, make a point going to them saying, "Wow, thanks. I saw what you did. I really appreciate that." And just kind of just start spreading goodwill. Like that. Ramakrishna's family home in Karmarpakor faces south and consists of 3 thatched huts with mud floors and mud walls, plus another small thatched hut that was the family shrine. The shrine has since been replaced by a concrete structure. The hut on the east was the parlor, and the middle one belonged to Rameshwar, who passed away in 1873, and his family. and the hut on the west belonged to Ramakrishna. This hut has one door and one window. It's 12 feet 10 inches by 8 feet 10 inches. To the south of the master's hut, there was a family shrine where Chudaram, Ramakrishna's father, installed the goddess Shitala, Raghuvir, Ramchandra, and Rameshwar Shiva. Holy Mother later mentioned that Mother Sitala was the original family deity in Kamarpakur, and that her father-in-law had seen Mother Sitala in a vision in the form of a little girl with a red sari sweeping away all evils with a broom, sprinkling water from the earthen pot with a mango twig, and giving peace to all beings. Shudaram used to offer khichdi to Raghuvir Ramachandra occasionally, because Raghuvir belonged to the western part of India. Holy Mother took shelter in her husband's hut. Ramakrishna's closest surviving relatives were his brother Rameshwar's children, Ramlal, Lakshmi, and Shivaram. Ramlal was the main priest of the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar, and he and his brother Shivaram spent most of their time there. Lakshmi stayed in Dakshineshwar with her brothers and did not go to Kamarpakur with Holy Mother. Lakshmi was outgoing and enjoyed singing and dancing to entertain devotees, but Holy Mother was shy and unassuming. At 34 years old, for the first time in her life, Holy Mother began to live alone. All right.